Welcome to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by thesoberclub.com. I'm Janey Grace. This is for you if you've quit the booze or you'd like to, or maybe you're just sober curious. I'll bring you tips and motivation without any judgment, and there'll be inspiration from experts, quit-lit authors, and sober heroes. Hi, and welcome to the podcast. I hope you're well. And this week, it's been one of those weeks because last Wednesday was a whole year since Steve Wright died, and I wrote a post just reflecting on that year. Really, this time last year, I did a whole thing on YouTube, which is still there. I look very raw in that. But it's been interesting because, of course, since last February, when Steve died, of course, my memoir came out in October, From Wham to Woo. And so I've had an opportunity to do lots of gigs, around the UK and festivals and bookshops. And it's just been amazing to meet so many Steve Wright listeners. In case you're new to the podcast, by the way, I was co-host on Steve Wright in the Afternoon for 24 years. My goodness, 24 years. So it meant a lot to me, and clearly it meant a lot to everyone. And it's just been amazing on this book tour to meet, podcast listeners, Wham fans, people who love 80s music, but many, many Steve Wright listeners who have just sort of shared with me how important he still is, in their life, and his show was their sort of daily companion, and how much he loved it, how much they loved his sense of humor, which of course I've mentioned a lot. He was very funny. I so wish you could have heard him off the air or in between when we opened the mic, as it were. But he really was like a friend to everyone rather than just a broadcaster. And it was really great hearing some of those heartwarming stories. I know his legacy really lives on. And one guy I remember on the Edinburgh gig just a couple of weeks ago was saying that he doesn't think we'll ever see the likes of that radio show again. And I think that's true, because Steve really was one of a kind, and I don't think you'd ever find anyone else as hardworking as him in radio, to be honest. And so, yeah, of course I miss him. It's been a great year to be able to celebrate him and at various things. And of course I got to meet Tom, which was fantastic, and watch this space because we're going to do something together. Tom is Steve's son. But anyways, I just wanted to start the podcast by giving a little tribute to the anniversary of Steve's passing. It was, he was so important. I share in the YouTube video, have a little watch of that, or the podcast that was this time last year called Remembering Steve Wright. And I talked there about all the different kind of things that, over the years that felt so important. Obviously we got to meet the world's celebs, the great and the good. But also we met some guests that literally changed my life. That's how I came to finally ditch the booze, was when Claire Pooley came in on the show, and that literally was when my life changed, when I finally read her book and then and quit the booze. So I've got a huge amount to be grateful for. And this week's podcast, we're going to dive back into a topic that I talk about a fair bit. I don't always go full on about it because I don't want to put people off, because I know some people are like, oh, stop being woo woo. But we're going to talk about self-love and how essential it is really in sobriety, and how actually sobriety is the key to self-love, really. And I think it's really difficult to actually even like yourself even a little bit and have that sense of self-esteem when you're still drinking. Certainly for me, it wasn't possible. And I think it comes back to something we've spoken about before on the podcast, about that sense of how alcohol lowers your vibration, how it keeps you stuck in the cycles of self-doubt, of numbing, of disconnection. It literally keeps you small. It keeps you a little bit under when it's starting to affect you. That I thought we'd do a rerun this week, by the way, of a podcast I did a while ago I interviewed Cheryl Rickman a couple of times, positive psychologist Cheryl Rickman, but I thought I'd share again the interview that I did with Cheryl about her book, You Are Enough. Again, it's one of those expressions that, oh, it's a little bit, let's put it on the bar of soap. But honestly, it is something we need to tap into. Actually, we are enough. And usually when we're drinking, we absolutely don't think we are. I certainly didn't. I like one of the quotes from Gabby Bernstein, who was a fellow Hay House author, but absolutely top spiritual guru, of course. And she says, the minute you stop drinking, you start feeling everything. And that's where the healing begins. We know that expression, don't we? You've got to feel all the feels. Because, as we've said so many times, when you take the alcohol away, it's not about what you're taking away and missing out on. There's nothing to miss out on. What you're actually doing is gaining. You're gifting yourself that opportunity for clarity, for a sense of authenticity, for that deep connection to who you really are. And that's when you can start to get towards the self-kindness, the self-esteem, and if it's not too scary a word for you, the self-love. Because, self-love isn't actually about, the bubble baths and the affirmations. It honestly is about showing up for yourself in a way that feels good. Another reason I'm sharing all of this with you, of course, is because well, obviously it's Valentine's Day, isn't it? So we need to be thinking about loving ourselves first. That's the bottom line. If you were interested in joining us in the Sober Club, if you're not already a member, this is a fantastic day to join because we are literally starting our self-love challenge. I thought Valentine's Day is as good a day as any to start our self-love challenge. You only need to commit 15 minutes a day max. I mean, if you've only got 7, that will do. But I'm going to bombard you as members with just so much lovely stuff, inspiration, meditations, little things you can just dip into that will just inspire you a little bit towards self-love. I know that Valentine's Day is all kind of over commercialized and, and all the stuff. But actually, this piece, the self-love piece, we need more. We need more of it. We really do. It's not just the kind of the ribbons and the hearts on all the produce in the shops that we should be thinking about. It's whether or not we're actually tapped into our own, our own self-kindness, really. I don't know how else to put it. Cheryl does a good job in the interview, so you can look forward to that rather than having me trying to explain it. I think the important thing for me is this piece about the way alcohol makes us, it kind of dulls us, right? It dulls our intuition. I used to think I was a really energetic person, really full of intuition, really, really good at sensing other people's energy, all of that stuff. But, I now realize that I was a dumbed down version of everything I could be, because that's what alcohol does. It means that you second guess yourself, that you're not quite sure whether you're enough. You wake up with that awful anxiety thing, and oh God, why can't I crack this? And it dulls the intuition, as I say, that kind of inner knowing when something isn't quite right. They talk about people losing their inhibitions. Well, yeah, we really do. Louise Hay had a lovely quote as well. She said, "You've been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." And that's really cool, isn't it? Louise Hay, of course, the founder of Hay House Publishing and queen of mirror work. She would recommend that you look in the mirror all the time, like constantly. She even kept one in her bra so she could whip it out and say, "I love you, Louise," which is a bridge too far for most of us, let's face it. But wouldn't it be great if we felt like that way? And sometimes you have to kind of fake it till you make it, or create it till you make it. But really, the absolute truth is, when you quit alcohol, something magical can happen. You can start to love yourself. I know that's a brave statement. You really can. Not because you're behaving better and you're you're not doing something that was bad for you, but because you can start to get into alignment with who you really are, and you can start to raise your vibration. Again, I've done a whole podcast on raising your vibration. I know, again, for some of you it might seem a bit woo, but it really is the case. You start to create that life that you don't want to escape from. So, why would you want to reach out for another drink? That's the very, very cool piece. So if you're interested in any of this, I hope you are. You'll love hearing Cheryl again, even if you heard the interview before. I think it's interesting. I think it's really good to hear something again, because you're in a different place, right? But don't forget, we've got the Self-Love challenge in the Sober Club. So join us in the Sober Club. It's very low cost. Just join us for this month if you like, and you get all of those amazing assets in the Self-Love challenge. There's no pressure. It's just there's some really cool things in there. It's like a little gift, an experiment. You can just become open and curious. You're already enough. You're already worthy. You're already completely whole. And, when you ditch the booze, oh man, you can start to really, experience some of that, the high vibrational you. So anyways, to that end, rather than reinvent the wheel, I realized that I've been talking a lot again recently about this phrase, you are enough. And I know it's been overused, but you know what? It's true. You actually are enough. You really just need to start to know that yourself. Right? And one of my guests from a while back, Cheryl Rickman, I've interviewed her before. She's a prolific author. She's got some fantastic books. And I remembered that I'd interviewed her for her book, You Are Enough. And I thought, let's just rerun that rather than try and reinvent the wheel. Let's have another listen to that conversation with Cheryl, because I think it's just perfect. And it really does sum up all the stuff we talk about an awful lot of the time. So enjoy the interview. One of the phrases that I say an awful lot to my clients is you are enough. And that's the title of a great new book by Cheryl Rickman. You are enough, embrace your flaws and be happy being you. What a fabulous sentiment. Welcome, Cheryl.
Hi there. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so chuffed for you. It's just such a great book. And it's one of the phrases that's been used a lot in recent years. But it's brilliant that you've actually sort of unpacked it all and actually brought some meaning to it. So just before we get into it, just tell us a little bit about your background for anyone who hasn't heard you, because I've interviewed you before.
Yeah, I started to study positive psychology in when was that, 2015. And yeah, I've written a ghostwriter, so I've written books for other people, but started writing books to help people kind of fret less and flourish more, and sort of inspired by I think the loss of both my parents and wanting to help people make the most of their lives, I guess. And this book is very much from that sentiment. We're told a lot of the time to kind of abide by societal, I call them the shackles of should, that society tells us we should look a certain way, or we should behave a certain way, or should want a certain dream to come true, and it can be quite restrictive and make us feel like we don't measure up. And so I wanted to write something that speaks to people and, like you say, unpacks all of that, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Just tell us a little bit about, if for anyone who doesn't really know what positive psychology is, just explain that for us.
Yeah, so psychology was very much about getting people from sort of not very well to neutral. And positive psychology is really the study of getting people from, it's north of neutral, so flourishing. So, focusing on interventions that can really make you sort of function really well.
Yeah.
Really kind of just developing that sort of side of things. So focusing on the good and counting your blessings, and also obviously understanding that there's a whole spectrum of emotion, and it's okay to feel not good sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's sort of acceptance of that as well. But it's more about the sort of trying to flourish in
Yeah,
life and make the
yeah, I
most.
love that. I mean, it links so well with the work that I do around positive sobriety, because,
Yeah.
similarly with sobriety, we don't have to wait until we are unwell to
Mm.
come back to a neutral state. We can actually start from where we are now and embrace the fact that how much better life is going to be when you're not actually hampering yourself with a
Yeah.
toxic liquid. So
Yes.
it links really well. And one thing I'm always talking about is how how exciting it is to actually look towards creating a life that you haven't got to escape from, so that you actually are willing to step into. And as you say, that doesn't necessarily mean everything's going to be perfect, of course. Kind
No.
of doesn't work that way, does it? Yeah. Okay. So let's dig into this topic then. What is the issue? I know in the book you talk about how really this goes back to the fact that we are actually hardwired to seek approval of others.
Yes. It's basically an ancient kind of survival response, that we are kind of wired to care what other people think about us because we were part of tribes, and we're wired really to fear rejection because we didn't want to get booted out of a tribe, because fending for yourself back in when in the Stone Age times was a dangerous kind of thing. So social acceptance and belonging are very important to our brains. So what we do is we seek out, we kind of define how well we're doing from a sort of combination of things, but from external feedback, including what society says we ought to be doing, and so on, and expectations that are put on us by externally, and then inner self-talk, which obviously, the inner critic and imposter syndrome and all these different things. But unfortunately, what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of that data that we're basing our self-worth on is actually incorrect or inaccurate, and inflexible. And it's often based on beliefs that we've sort of thought process that we've thought about over time to become beliefs. And they can be actually, for example, external feedback can be based on something that's very inaccurate, because it could be somebody's having a bad day, so they've just dished out a judgmental comment, and actually it's nothing to do with you. It's because they've been feeling bad themselves, or perhaps you might remind somebody of somebody that's hurt their feelings. So, and often the external feedback kind of has nothing to do with you. It's to do with somebody else's kind of own prejudices and expectations and all those sorts of things. And then our internal self-talk is often to do with this negativity bias that we've got, that's ingrained in us, again a survival mechanism to make sure we kind of worry first to prevent anything terrible happening, and also sort of like be quite judgmental, and also on things like comparing ourselves to others, which again, as we know, the whole compare and despair thing, often we're comparing our sort of blooper reel, if you like, to everybody else's highlights reel. So again, that's very inaccurate. There's a phrase I say in the book, which is something like the grass is greener because it's astroturf. Because often, it's glossy and shiny, and people aren't showing their true selves, because we can't do that. So yeah, all these the external thing is obviously it can be inaccurate, and so can the internal.
It is interesting, isn't it? This whole judgmental thing, because I get the hardwiring for approval bit. We want to fit in, we want to be accepted. I get that completely, but I just wonder why so many of us are really kind to other people, and you know, whatever their flaws, we accept them, and we just sort of go, oh well, it's just how he is, how she is. And but when it comes to ourselves, we are incredibly unkind and very judgmental, and over dramatize everything, and we literally find it very hard to see. I mean, somebody wants that lovely description of, in your head, you're this kind of big stick person and everyone else is a little stick person, but in their head they're the big stick person. So we all do this, don't we? So it's a wonder that we can't kind of grasp that and go, well, do you know what, maybe other people don't think that I look as terrible as I think I look, or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so true. We're just very harsh on ourselves. And what's really interesting is if you think about books and films, we tend to gravitate towards perhaps characters that are imperfect. Like, we like a flawed hero. We like somebody who's got quite a lot to learn, and they've made that mistake, and because we can relate to them, and we like that. We prefer sort of flawed characters are more likable.
And the kind of underdog thing, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we do definitely like that.
Yeah, and yet, when we make mistakes or we are imperfect and flawed, we give ourselves such a hard time. And actually, the irony is we're probably more likable which is obviously the social acceptance thing, when we are showing our flawed selves and being vulnerable and showing up kind of authentically, and actually, I'm not very good at this and I'm winging this, and actually being honest about that. So that's that kind of strange irony that actually, when we show up as our true selves, which is flawed, we're probably going to be more accepted anyway, rather than perfection and striving for that sort of all these expectations, which I think the expectation side can really get us down. So
yeah, there's that lovely phrase, isn't there? Flawsome. You're awesome, yes, but also potentially flawed, and that's okay too.
Definitely.
Tell us a bit more about this perfection that we're all reaching for, and the sort of pressures of perfection and expectation. I mean, you touched on it, when you mentioned the sort of the grass is greener. Where does the sort of social media fit in? Because obviously it's the whole thing has ramped up. The expectation has ramped up in recent years, but it has always been the case that we've done this comparing thing, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think what happens is, really, as soon as you're born, unfortunately for parents, it's this, well, they were talking at such and such an age, and yes, they're walking now, and in the playground, it's sort of who can run the fastest and who can, you're put into sets sort of for academics, and and sometimes perhaps with siblings, one sibling might be amazing at one thing and another at something else, and so it is kind of deeply ingrained in our society that we compare ourselves even before social media. And this sort of pressure to be perfect or to do well. And I think that the answer, I think, perhaps is to choose different metrics of measurement, because we're measuring each other against everything, whether it's academically or house size or how many holidays a year. And actually, when we stop for a second and think, there's two things we can do really, is choosing different metrics. So it doesn't have to be about success or academics or whatever. It's what makes you feel alive, and what is it in your life, whether it's having a good hug with somebody you love, or looking at the sunset, remembering to look at the sunset, things like that. Have you done that enough? That can be the metric of just much more sort of life affirming things like that. And actually measuring, kindness and contribution and love, they can be the metrics that you sort of measure yourself. If you need a metric, have I made someone smile today?
Yeah.
And that can be enough. So I do think, that it's kind of like going back to that idea of, with the comparing as well, is actually, have I been enough me today?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that. But, we're not taught that in school at all. I mean, we really are not. It's, I mean, what would you like to see change in that respect?
I think it is really, I mean, certainly when it comes to school, is nurturing people's individual spark. And I think the whole don't get me started on education. I think there's a lot that can be done there to really sort of find out what people enjoy doing and what they're good at, and then let them focus on that, because that can be their job.
Absolutely.
Rather than try and be good at all these different things that actually you might struggle with, and then that can make you feel less than good enough when so I think also really making sure that people, children especially with social media, just reminding them that there's the filter thing, that lots of things, that it's all edited and filters and everything, and not real life, and you can't see the whole picture. So for example, if you think about how we used to share photo albums before social media,
we choose the best ones, right?
You wouldn't just put you going around the supermarket doing your day-to-day stuff. You pick holiday photos
or a picture of your dinner.
Exactly. You'd put all the best stuff, and that's how you'd collate it, and that's really what social media does. And so to compare anything with that, even if you're comparing your best stuff to somebody else's best stuff, you're still not seeing the whole picture. And even the perfect family shot of somebody with their soulmate, and their, it's all glorious and wonderful, and actually they might have just had the mother of all rows 5 minutes ago, but they didn't share that part. And that's the other thing. I think we don't share the difficult stuff often, partly because we maybe don't want to, or partly because it's actually not ours to share. So if you're having a difficulty in your relationship, or it's not really, that's about somebody else, that would be invading someone else's privacy. They might not want you to talk about that on social media, or some other issue that you're having. It might be private for somebody else, or your child, or things like that. So you don't share the rough parts. It's only the smooth. So I think we have a tendency to kind of envy up. I think it's called envy up or scorn down. So you either envy and think, oh, their life looks so wonderful, or, oh, well, at least I'm doing better than that person. And actually, like I said, if we just sort of choose this more sort of temporal comparison, where we're sort of just measuring our progress perhaps compared to yesterday, so we're more comparing ourselves to how we did yesterday, and that's sort of a bit more healthy way to do it.
I mean, when people are ditching the booze, I hear time and time again, people will say, I'm so angry with myself. I'm so useless. I'm so hopeless. And, I ended up having a drink again, and I said I wasn't going to. And there's this sort of barrage of absolute sort of self-hatred really comes flying out. And yet the minute they post a message like that on my group, on the Sober Club, the amount of love shared with them is immense, because not because anyone's saying, well, good for you, you decided to relapse. Everyone's saying, well, you know what, it happened, but what can you learn from it? And how amazing is it that you've noticed it this time, and that you felt like shit? Because that's a great lesson. And so they get all this kind of love bombing, and then they feel buoyed up again. So, the power of that connection is really important. And I think the danger is when we are alone with our inner critic, that's when it gets really bad, isn't it? When we literally take ourselves off and just listen to that voice of absolute self-hatred.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like, share it, like your mistakes are how we learn. And we know that. But so actually, you're more likely to, if you relapse and you share it with other people and people can relate to it, like you go, okay, what made that happen? And also giving yourself permission to be human, because you can't get it right the whole time, and things happen, and sort of falling off the wagon or whatever. If you just get back on, then it's okay. So it's a bit like if you're having your inner critic and you really dwell on it and you spend a lot of time there. And I guess the same would be with alcohol. If you relapse and you keep it's continuous and you don't get back on. So I think it's just recognizing this thing and giving yourself a break, and actually knowing that, look, a tiny bit of progress is progress. And if you step back, you fall off or you do make a mistake, you can learn from it and
get back on the horse, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Talking with Cheryl Rickman, the book is You Are Enough, Embrace Your Flaws and Be Happy Being You. Cheryl, I'm really interested in the way you talk about this whole thing of our inner committee. We spoke earlier about the voice, the voice in our head that tells us we're not good enough, but you're saying we've got a whole committee in there.
Oh yes, yeah, we have. So you've got sort of the inner critic, and that's kind of driven by this negativity bias that will focus on the one criticism that somebody else may have pointed out, or that you said something, I shouldn't have said that, if only I'd not said that, instead of all the wonderful things you've said. So you've got the inner critic. Imposter syndrome obviously pops up.
That's a big one. I've been having a lot of that lately.
Oh yes, and it's what's so interesting is literally everybody, I think Michelle Obama and all these sort of wonderful people that you think, they're so confident, but everybody has it and thinks, oh gosh, I'm going to get found out. And I think it's accepting that and knowing that is completely normal, and we do have those that inner committee, shitty committee, as it's sometimes referred to.
I love that. I've heard that one before. Oh my God. I'll have to credit you every time. I love it.
Yeah, so that's definitely a thing. I think it's what is important is it's almost imagining you've got a boardroom and you've got these members of your that committee, and then actually sometimes having an inner cheerleader there.
Yeah.
To go, okay, well, yes, you did say that, and perhaps you could have done that differently. But remember the other day when you did this and you were really proud of yourself, and just remember that, and just sort of reminding you of the good stuff.
Yeah.
So you've got sort of an inner cheerleader to sort of combat the inner critic. And then also like a joy detective, I would say.
Lovely.
You have to really sometimes really look hard to find the silver lining, and find the good and count the blessings and focus on what you've got to be grateful for, rather than what I wish I had this, and I wish just what you've got now. And that can be a real good sort of counter to the negativity bias, when you really focus on that, and then also just the inner cheerleader side of things, sort of really thinking about your strengths. There's different. I think I might have mentioned it when we spoke before, but there's different things you can find online that sort of tell you a bit more about what your strengths are, like quizzes. And there's one called the VIA Strengths, Values in Action, VIA Strengths Finder. And it's quite long. It's like a 25-minute survey, but it's so accurate, and it just tells you things like, that you're really very optimistic, or you've got a lot of zest, or your leadership is one of your strengths, and just sort of reminding yourself of what your strengths are and what you've been through. I think that's key.
I think most of us don't sort of acknowledge ourselves enough. We never sing our own praises. You know, when I work with people who are, you know, sort of growing their business, and I'm helping them to get a bit of PR or whatever, you know, I'll ask them to talk about something great about them, and no one can do it. They can tell you the stuff that where it relates to the work they do. So, you know, you might sort of pull out of them eventually, you know, oh, my products are eco-friendly and I'm a good listener and I'm a good team player, but they very rarely can get to the point where they can actually say something fabulous about themselves, because we're really not taught to do that. That's egotistical, allegedly, you know.
Yes, that's self-love.
Yeah, exactly. That's self-care, self-love, and those things are kind of been drummed out of us at a very early age. And certainly in my case, you know, I thought the self-care was the glass of wine. You know, I had no idea what it meant, no idea at all. So what are your sort of top tips for us then? Apart from getting the book, obviously, where can we start? What are a few little things that everyone can do to start to recognize that, you know, we are enough?
One of the can be quite powerful, actually, is digging out a photograph of yourself as a child.
Yeah.
And if you think about, you know, you would never, like the way we speak to ourselves, often people say, or speak to yourself like you're like a good friend.
Yeah.
And that's great. But also sometimes speak to yourself like you would a child that you really love and care about.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you would do is, you know, like really with vitriol put down a child in a certain way. And yet we speak like that to ourselves all the time. So sometimes finding a photograph of yourself as a child, and even sort of taking a photo of it and having it on your phone and just looking at it and just reminding, and sometimes looking at it and thinking, actually, you know, I'm going to be nicer to this person.
Yes, absolutely.
She's doing her best with what she's got, and, you know, she's going to mess up sometimes, and that's fine. So that's one way. And that can also lead you to the idea of seeing yourself through the eyes of someone who believes in you, like always seeing yourself, you know, through a friend's eyes or a parent's eyes or somebody, and actually you know, so you can try and cultivate that sort of self-belief. And I think there was in fact I kind of try and find it in my book. There's I'll read this little snippet, which is about sort of seeing yourself through the eyes of someone who believes in you and sees your potential, and you know, perhaps is even not just a friend but a fan of yours. And I say in the book, seeing yourself as not good enough is like a sunset thinking it's not orange enough, or it's too glowy, or a mountain thinking it's not high enough or too jaggedy. The sunset's amazing, the mountain is amazing, you are amazing. So it's just reminding yourself of that by seeing the best in yourself, and sometimes writing down something nice that someone said about you, because you focus, your negativity bias will focus so much on all the terrible things that you then internalize. Actually, someone said that, you've got really nice eyes, or I love the way you're a really good listener. Just writing that down, and I am a good listener, can internalize it. So sometimes I would say writing down kind of our positive I am statements.
Definitely. And I was talking to another coach who was saying that, you know, and this is something that we definitely do in NLP, is that we look at the things that we say, you know, that we always say, I'm always this, or I'm never that. You know, it's the always and the never, isn't it? They're the kind of things that, because they've been so ingrained in us, that's what we think we've become. And we all do this. We're all guilty of it. I catch myself. So, I never do that. You know, and then you have, well, hold on a minute, is that actually a fact? Or is it just a limiting belief that I never do that? Or that I always do something, or always say something? So I guess that's, you know, as you say, what do you call it? The shoulds? What's your word about the shoulds?
The shackles.
The shackles.
Of should.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I guess is the same thing. So how do we deal with the shackles of shoulds then?
I think that there's another sort of phrase of taking your thoughts to court.
Yeah, you mentioned that last time. I love it.
Yeah, just actually questioning some of those thoughts, and actually, if you could find one bit of evidence to that, to support or deny the claim that you're making, that you're terrible, you're never going to be good at this. And actually, if you can find one shred of evidence to counter that, then it's obviously not accurate, and you can sort of reframe it. And as far as the shackles of should go, I think there's quite a lot of exercises in the book that you can sort of go through, and for each of these things, like the pressures of perfection and the shackles of should and compare and despair and so on. But one of the things is to kind of think about the shoulds, what are the shoulds that you've been told in your life? So it could be, you should, say for example, at work, you should wear very dark clothes, and you should present yourself in a certain way, and actually thinking, well, is that me? And I think it always comes back to, am I being me enough again? And so actually, no, I like colourful things. I am going to wear colour. I can still be smart, but I can wear colourful clothes. So I think it's sort of going back to those, because society does literally sit us down and tell us what we should wear or should.
Well, we're a lot more controllable, aren't we, if we're all doing exactly the same thing?
Yeah, and they can sell more things to us if
exactly.
we think we're not young looking enough, or young. And actually, no. It's very much just going back to measuring ourselves in different ways. And if thinking about your values, what matters to you. So actually, if kindness is a value, or honesty is a value, and that's really important to you, then I think sometimes measuring yourself a bit, if you're going to, on those things, can combat the shoulds that you're told. And actually, did I speak kindly to that person, or was I polite, or was I honest? Yes, there you go. That's enough then.
Exactly. And that's an important point too, because I think, well, certainly a lot of the people that I work with, if you've been drinking for years, people are often not very good at setting boundaries. And that they're huge people pleasers, and so they'll literally start drinking just because somebody else suggests they should. So just to literally kind of hang out with someone else, they'll end up drinking again. And what's really interesting is when you've finally cracked this, and you can just sort of step into your new identity, you realize that it is okay to be yourself, and that might mean saying no.
Yeah. Exactly, and it's I should just have a drink because it's the social, to be sociable or whatever, and it's really tuning into what your own integrity, and you've made this decision to which is a great decision, to find other to not drink, or to there's life after booze, and there's lots of so much. So you've made the decision, so that's what you want to stick to, and that's okay. And also, I think people are accepting, and when you're yourself, I think people really do admire.
Well, I think that's it, isn't it? I think it all comes back to that authenticity that you feel. There's something really very powerful and very attractive about someone who is completely authentic, even though you might not agree with them or you feel the same way. There's a sort of respect, isn't there, when someone is standing in their kind of authenticity?
Definitely. Yeah,
it takes a while to get to that, though, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. And it's not hard, and that's because of all these expectations, I think, that we have to live up. We think we have to live up to. But just recognizing that actually being flawed, which is the human. That's everybody has flaws. But when you remember that actually that's quite what's the word? Not redeeming. Admirable. Can't think of the word.
Well, it's very relatable.
Yeah, it's very relatable, and it's just it's something we admire, really, when like I said, with books and films and stuff, and in real life. So I think it's just acknowledging that, and then just showing up as yourself, and that being okay. And actually, that's so freeing, because that's why I say the shackles of should, because really, when you release them, and you're free just to be yourself. I do think sometimes it can get easier with age. I do think there's a sort of period when you're a teenager and in your 20s and stuff that you can be so trapped in this wanting to be liked and peer pressure and everything else. And you can, when you start to realize that actually I can stop worrying about what other people think of me, because they're not thinking of me, they're worried about what I think of them. So when you have that kind of light bulb moment, and then obviously the social acceptance and belonging and stuff still matters, but I think it's you can release those shackles of should and just sort of step into your own power and focus on your strengths, but also embrace and accept your weaknesses as actually sometimes quite attractive.
Definitely. And that's how we get to optimum health and wellness, really, isn't it? Because I think when you're in constant stress and feeling under judgment and full of these limiting beliefs and sort of arguing with yourself the whole time, it's putting a huge stress on your body, actually.
Yeah, it does. And actually it doesn't get you anywhere, because you're not then enjoying the journey. I heard Fern Cotton actually earlier say, she was on her Instagram, and she said that, if you're striving for perfection, you're miserable.
Yeah.
What's the point? You're not enjoying the journey. And I think that's the key thing. I think just thinking about what can I do. One of the other things that I focus on about enoughness is I've been doing this list of delight. I think I mentioned in the previous conversation, and that's really helpful, because it's just the little things like the smell of coffee.
I love it.
Those tiny things. It doesn't have to be big. And then, because there's so much pressure on achievement, and you've got to do this and you've got to achieve all these things and do. That's why I've put the book into sort of being enough, doing enough, looking enough, feeling enough. Am I feeling happy enough? Am I, so there's all these kind of goes across all these things. And I think actually, if you just have these small little recognition of these moments of delight, then that's enough. That can be enough. And also have I done enough? Your to-do list. Actually, I did 2 things, and that's enough. Today.
That's right. Brilliant. So, I love it. Thank you so much, Cheryl Rickman. The book is You Are Enough, Embrace Your Flaws and Be Happy Being You. Thank you so much, Cheryl. It's great to chat to you.
Thank you, Janey. Really enjoyed that conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Cheryl. Good to hear that again. So don't forget, join us in the Sober Club for our self-love challenge. It would be really great to have you part of that, thesoberclub.com. Also, another way of taking great care of yourself is to remember that, we've all got stuff from the past, but there are ways you can heal the past, and in so doing, really, really impact the present. And so to that end, please check out Family Constellations. It's Sunday, the 23rd of Feb, and it's in Hertfordshire, and it would be amazing to see some of you there. It's an incredible experience, difficult to describe, but have a look at my website and you'll find a bit of info. And then this Tuesday, for those people, I appreciate it, not everyone, but for those people who have ditched the booze and you're now thinking, I'd love to explore what's next for me, explore my purpose, think about maybe inspiring others, then join us for a free webinar, What Does It Mean to Be a Sober Coach, or Exploring a Career as a Sober Coach. That's this Tuesday at 7:45 UK time, online, and it's completely free. It's not salesy. But for both of those, for the webinar, if that's you, if you've already ditched the booze, and for Constellations on the 23rd, go to thesoberclub.com and click on events, and you'll find all of that info there, and just register for that webinar. It'd be fantastic to see you. And then a date for your diary is, in fact, it's open if you'd like to book it. A Soulful Sobriety Retreat, 7th to the 9th of March in Essex. Still places on that. Be amazing if you could join us. That's going to be very special. And all of the things we were talking about will be very much part of that retreat, focusing on self-care. We'll have a cacao ceremony. We'll have a sound bath. It's going to be amazing. So check that out as well. And then a date for your diary. is Tuesday, the 18th of March. I'm hoping to do my next Alcohol Free Life podcast live at Club Soda in London. So I'll let you know when the tickets are released for that. It'd be fantastic if you're able to come down. It's always a wonderful, way to just meet like-minded people and feel just part of this amazing tribe, really, of people who are sober. Wasn't it great, by the way? Anyone who saw there was a program last week on alcohol-free booze, Is It Worth It? I think was the title on Channel 4. I thought it was all right, the program. I mean, I wish they'd have done a little more on just how terrible alcohol is, rather than just focusing on the taste and the cost of alcohol-free drinks. But as you know, my mantra is keep the ritual, change the ingredients. I think it's really important to have something grown up that you like, because the unconscious mind, likes that ritual, likes a nice glass. Anyway, what I was going to say wasn't it great to see Laura, Club Soda, featured on that program? Just fantastic work that they're doing. So you know where to find me, at Janey Lee Grace. You can follow me on social media. Please do. Please reach out if you're new to all of this and maybe you don't want to join the Sober Club, but reach out anyway. Let someone know that you're doing this. It is a great time to join us, as I say, because it's the Self-Love Challenge that kicks off today, and the price is going up as well. So join us now before it does. Get in at the old price, and I'll see you same time next week. Happy Valentine's Day, and start becoming curious about that self-love. Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by the Sober Club. Please rate and review. And if you want support, accountability and inspiration, and you want to live your best life without the booze, check out thesoberclub.com.